Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee for Monday, October 28th, 2013. I'm Paul Cleghorn, Chair of the committee. I'm joined by the Honorable Mitchell Englander, and Mr. Kretz will be here momentarily. I'd like to first extend the opportunity for anybody who would like to be heard by the committee, either on an item that's on our agenda or in general public comment. Please fill out one of these cards and bring it forward. I don't believe I have any general public comment cards yet. But what we're going to be doing is retiring to closed session to consider items 1 through 5. Actually, without objection, item number 5 will be continued to November 18th. Mr. Englander, unless you have any objection to that, that'll be the action of the committee. So we'll be considering items 1 through 4 in closed session. Are there any cards, anyone who wishes to be heard on items 1 through 4? Seeing none, public comment on those matters will be closed, and we will proceed to closed session. When we come back, just because I know sometimes we keep you all waiting a bit in closed session, I'm going to be proposing items 8 and 9 as consent candidates, and then we'll proceed directly to number 6 and proceed in order from there. So with that, we'll retire. We're continuing item 5 until November 18th. Okay. So with that, we'll retire to closed session. Be back shortly. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We are back in open session for this meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. And for the record, Mr. Kretz was in attendance and participating in all 4 of the closed session items 1 through 4. And again, we've continued item 5 to November 18th. Members, I would propose that we accept items 8 and 9 on consent, unless you have any questions or concerns about those 2 matters. Those are both note and file reports, and we can take those on consent. In my view, any objections? Seeing none, that'll be the action of the committee. That brings us then to item number 6.
Item number 6 is the motion, price Labange, relative to expanding the scope of work of the consultant working on the realignment of city departments to create a new development and services department, to include a report on options other than consolidation that would improve the city's development process and other actions necessary to delay implementation of the consolidation until fiscal year 2014-15. And this matter was heard on October 8, 2013 by the Planning and Land Use Committee, which had various recommendations.
All right. We have a staff report on this, first of all. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. We'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. Jason Klein with the Office of the CAO.
Gary Golitz, Matrix Consulting Group.
Matthias Farthan with the Office of the CLA.
Tyler Munhall, CAO.
Before you today is the price Labange motion. It relates to postponing functional integration of the departments as it currently appears in the budget until next fiscal year, as well as gives instructions for CAO staff to come back with a report with the recommendations to make the departments whole and to take the resources out of the combined pot and redistribute them back to the original departments, as well as extend the position authority for the positions through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. There was the Plum Committee already heard this matter. Maybe give a summary of the Plum Committee action and anything else you'd like to add.
So the Plum Committee adopted the motion and added 4 friendly amendments, one of which would allow the city attorney to wait until the council considers the policy report that our office will be issuing before bringing forward the implementing ordinances. That's item number 1 that they added. Then also what Jason just said about if we're not implementing January 1st, we need to make the existing departments whole because they essentially cease to exist on December 31st. So if we need to continue through the rest of the year, we need to put that back together so that they can do that. It also directs us, the CAO, to report back on any changes that we need to make to the consultant's contract to cover the additional issues addressed in the motion. And it directs the development services departments to continue working with our offices, the city attorney, personnel department, and controller's office throughout the process.
Okay. And do you have an estimate on when the pending joint CAO-CLA policy report will be completed and reported back?
It will be probably 2 weeks.
Within 2 weeks of getting final determination on whether or not this motion is going to be adopted. Most of the items that are contained in the motion have been looked at. In terms of options other than consolidation, those are going to be the MOAs between the departments, looking at co-location, looking at setting up geographic teams, looking at the revenues and putting together funding appropriations and allocations across departments from a single funding source, who's going to manage that funding source, regulations such as Recode LA, technology improvements such as Build LA continue to move forward, and those are cross-departmental. So many of the options outside of just functional integration and establishing a new department are already moving forward and would would be included in the report.
Yes, but in short, the adopted budget included the functional integration of building and safety and planning, in addition to functions from other departments related to development. And that was supposed to have a implementation date of January 1st of 2014. And it was for the functional integration. So what this motion, what the Plum report would do, would now allow the consultant to also consider other options besides functional integration and improving the city's development process. And it would also postpone any action until 1415. And if adopted as is, that's why the Plum report then would instruct the CAO to come back and then provide additional funding to the departments to enable them to finish out the fiscal year with sufficient funding to operate as separate departments. And that's what's before you today.
Although I'm sure it's a small point in the big scheme of things, has there been analysis or discussion of the additional cost of the expanded scope of work that would be called for under this recommendation?
At this time, there is no additional cost.
Okay. Members? Mr. Englander, I'm sure you want to start off.
Thank you very much. And as I was originally the mover of the original motion that put this process in place and had full council support, I think the important thing to recognize here, and it's critical, is that I believe everybody's on the same page, that we all realize we have to improve the process, and that there is a lack of collaboration and a ping-pong effect that happens with both stakeholders and the applicants of projects, that there's no clear, concise way to get answers, that there's a gap in a collaborative effort as well as technology and transparency. And so with a lot of these issues that are, I know the consultants, you guys have done a great job in a very short amount of time. This started off many, many years ago that I got involved in the effort, but fast forward to the idea that every year there are surveys done about the city of Los Angeles and in fact why we're losing so many companies here in Los Angeles, why people are moving out, and why they're not expanding or why they're closing their doors. And in survey after survey, whether it's the Cosmon cost of doing business or BizFed survey, whatever the case may be, there's typically two top-line answers before they get into the detail. And the two answers are, one, the cost of doing business in Los Angeles in terms of having a business tax and just the overall cost of operation here in Los Angeles. The second reason that people give, and there's probably half a dozen reasons, including workforce development and other causes, but the second reason is the bureaucracy here is very difficult to navigate. What we've done here is not only shedding a light on it, which has already been done. We've hung a lantern on this, but we're looking for ways to fix the process, whatever that might be. We've spent a lot of effort and time and money and resources and staff time looking at and dissecting all the processes and functions. And it's not so much, quite frankly, the people either doing the work or at the top. It's a process that has, over years, morphed into what we know today. And so now is a great opportunity for a reset of that, whatever that might be. Allowing more time, it's not just what this does. It gives it another dimension and a conversation, which is critically important. And quite frankly, I applaud our new mayor he's made this a top priority as well. It was brought up not only during his campaign for mayor, but continues to talk about how we can improve customer service here in the city, and that's really what it boils down to. And so I want to thank all the people who have been so deeply committed and involved at every level of engaging in this, both in the city and outside the city, and all the stakeholders in the industry, the associations. This must be and has to be one of the top priorities in the city of Los Angeles is to fix some of the systems here and make it easier not only for those stakeholders and the applicants in the industry, but our city family as well, to make it a seamless effort, to make it easier and more efficient. And I think that's overall, that's the outcome, and that's the goal. That's always been the objective. And so I think this continues to go in that direction by adopting this and this plum report. So.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kretz.
Yeah, I agree the goal is important, and I've been looking at ways to do this for the 4 years I've been here, and we did something similar years ago in West Hollywood, which had a bad process 20, 25 years ago. And we identified the problems, and we resolved them. And things like not having agreement on how to handle certain things, which I think is a problem in our city as well. So you get one staff person, you might be told one thing. You get another staff person, you might be told another thing. So we tried to do things like having training to make sure that our advice was similar, that our approach was similar, and that it wouldn't be so different if you had a different person. Trying to have the same person on the project all the way through. Having a checklist at the very beginning, so you'd say, okay, here's all the things you needed to do, rather than what we were doing, which was saying, here, you need to do these 3 things, and they come back and say, well, but you didn't do these 3 other things. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of the process, and I suspect the situation is similar here. The question for me is the answer consolidation, or is the answer identifying what the changes are that we need and whether we can do them just as well without consolidation? I mean, I think that's really the question. What are we identifying as the goals that consolidation would solve? And then can we go back and say, how do we do this without the disruption of consolidation? Because if we can do it without consolidating, it certainly makes more sense than having to go through the chaos of making a change that may not be necessary. So rather than saying, how do we do it, I think we really need to look at whether we should do it. And I think our other approach which was, how can we do this, I think is putting the cart before the horse. I think this motion is more in the right direction. What are the problems we're trying to solve? How can we solve them without consolidation, or can we? If we can't, and consolidation is the answer, I think we need to study that before we make that determination. So I think this is all going in the right direction, and then I'm very supportive of this concept.
Very good. Thank you. Well, this is an issue that's garnered significant public attention, and if Mr. Englander, we wanted to put a lantern on it, I think it's been more like a huge spotlight, and I think the direction that we're going in is, in fact, as you say, Mr. Kress, to broaden the range of options to address the very essential problems that we have been trying to address. And anyway, this proposal has generated a lot of cards, so thank you very much for that report. We're going to take comment from the public before we have further discussion, and that's our first card. First speaker will be Jack Allen, who also provided a written report, and Mr. Allen will be followed by Mike Massey. Mr. Allen, welcome, and Mr. Massey, you can come on up too.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Jack
Welcome.
Allen, President of Palisades Preservation Association. We support the motion, and I support the comments that Mr. Councilman Koretz made. We're opposed to the consolidation, because we believe it can be done without having to go through the improvements can be made without going through the consolidation. I've been a city attorney in 2 cities that consolidated their departments. It didn't do anything but create a unproductive bureaucracy level that wasn't necessary. It didn't improve the processing of the permits. Now, what we're talking about in Los Angeles 90% of the permits, development permits in Los Angeles go through without any problem whatsoever. So we're really talking only about 10%. And in doing that, the number of suggestions have been made by the consultant as to procedures that could be adopted which would improve the efficiency of the development process, which I'm very familiar with in the process in this city. And those can be implemented without the consolidation of the department. The big problem here is not accountability. The big problem is resources. The departments don't have the resources, and they need some restructuring in the construction service centers to be better implemented to process these applications so that we're not going all over the city to do things. And consolidating those services there better would do it. Its problem is resources. That's the biggest problem you're going to have, because that's if you don't have the people and you don't have the technology, you're not going to achieve the improvements that you need to make. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Mike Massey, followed by Karen Izumi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee and council. My name is Mike Massey. I am the Executive Director of the Piping Industry Progress and Education Trust Fund. I'm representing over 20,000 workers today and over 500 contractors. As you might imagine, we have a significant investment industry-wise in the building and safety department and development process here in the city. We urge caution on this. We support the direction you're going in. We have seen consolidations in other cities. We have seen them result in less service to the industry and less service to the public, so we urge you to take this one easy, take your time, consider all of the options you have, and do the right thing. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Karen Izumi, followed by Javier Alipio.
Hello, my name is Karen Izumi, and I'm the first vice president of MCIA, and I'm also a senior fire sprinkler inspector with LADBS. We are in favor of this motion to include all other options. I believe that it is important to look at the individual department's ability to become more efficient so Los Angeles can become more business friendly. Let's make a real improvements instead of creating the illusion of making changes. Therefore, we hope you allow the consultant more latitude to conduct their analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Javier Alipio, followed by Johnny Utronic.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Javier Alipio. I've been working for Los Angeles Building and Safety for 36 years. I'm a second vice president of the MCIA union. I'm here to say that we are in favor for the motion to extend time for the consultant so the consultant will not be hurried and make a proper analysis for the pros and cons of the consolidation. I want to reiterate, which I said last time, to make the proper department, these departments have separate goals and separate issues to be addressed. We are in favor of the motion, but not in favor of the consolidation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Johnny Utronic, followed by Julie Hazuka.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Johnny Utrinich, and I'm a senior electrical inspector for the Department of Building and Safety. I'm also the president of the MCIA, the Inspectors Union. Government always strives to improve. However, some decisions are made in haste. This motion will allow the consultant to explore all options and ways to improve services without being held to a predetermined conclusion, which is consolidation. This report will indicate what improvements are needed and whether or not creating a larger bureaucracy is really the way to go. This information will allow the City Council to make an informed, balanced decision that will help us all. I ask this committee pass this motion so this can become a reality. I thank you for your time for hearing me on this matter.
Thank you very much, and sorry for my poor pronunciation. Our next speaker is Julie Hazuka, followed by Michael Hunt.
Good afternoon, honorable council members. My name is Julie Hazuka. I've been an electrical inspector for the City of Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety for the past 12 years. I am also a member of the MCIA Inspectors Union. Today, I would like to strongly urge this committee to vote in favor of this motion. It just makes sense. It gives the consultants the time that they need to obtain as much information as possible, to look at all the available options, not only that of the consolidation. The consultant's report will indicate what efficiencies are needed to improve the system and whether or not consolidation is a good idea or if separating them is the best course of action. With the new expanded report, the City Council will be able to make the best possible choice for this city. I thank you for your time on this important issue.
Thank
Good
you.
afternoon.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Hunt, followed by John Henning.
Council members, thank you again for your time on this matter, and I support the motion that's in front of you as well. As a commercial general contractor doing business with the city of Los Angeles is one of the few municipalities where we can commit to say, plan check will take us this much time. Getting permits and inspections will take this much time. It helps us stay on schedule and helps us be able to create job opportunities, not only for the construction industry, but also for the other people that are the tenants that are moving in, the surrounding businesses, et cetera. So I think that taking some time looking at it and seeing that how you can do some items a little more efficient rather than a larger consolidation would be beneficial for everyone. And I appreciate your comments that you had earlier. I'm glad to see that Mr. Councilmember Englander that you're open to this evaluation as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is John Henning Jr., followed by Teresa Abraham.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is John Henning, and I represent La Cienega Partners, LP, the owner of the Beverly Center, a major regional shopping center located in the city. We support the Price-Labange motion. The Beverly Center was built in 1982. During the last 3 decades, we've worked constructively with many city departments, including the Planning Department and the Department of Building and Safety. Of course, nothing is perfect, and therefore we fully support the goal of improving the city's permitting process. Still, combining 2 departments of this size in a city of this size would be a monumental change. As Council Member Koretz acknowledged, we think it makes sense to pause, contemplate the process, gather the information that we need to answer the question, should we do this, and then move on to the question, how we should do it, if that's the right thing to do. So we support the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Teresa Abraham, followed by Tim Walker.
Hi. Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Abraham. I represent myself as an LADBS employee and as an EAA union steward. I also represent several employees sitting in the audience with concern over this item. We are here in support of the motion to put forth to open up the study and to define what it will take to improve the service we provide the development industry. I agree with Council Member Koretz. It seems that up until now we've been putting the cart before the horse and finding a solution to an undefined problem. No study has recommended merging these departments because merging them will only rearrange the system and does nothing to address the real problems or concerns. We are with Mayor Garcetti in saying that what we need to do is find a solution and not just rearrange bureaucracy. We respectfully request that you adopt this motion.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Tim Walker.
Yes, that's me.
And then I see that we've been joined by Councilmember Labange. So, Mr. Labange, if you'd like to say a few words as well. You don't have to fill out a card, but if you don't mind, Mr. Walker, we'll, out of deference to our colleague, if you don't mind.
Mr. Walker, please, go ahead.
All right.
Okay.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the City Council, my name is Tim Walker. I'm a real estate developer here in Los Angeles. My projects range in value between $150 and $200 and $300 million a year. Currently, I'm building at Playa Vista, where I've been under construction for about the last 25, 26 years. Started working at Playa Vista in 1988. I've had the opportunity to work with the Planning Department and Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety. Both of them are good. Both of them did what they said they committed to do. Sitting in front of you is a series of decisions, and I'm urging you to take a look at the options that have been proposed for you to take a look at. I'm going to end by saying this is really not just a policy decision, but from my standpoint, it's a business decision that has profound implications for our city doing business, not immediately, but in the long-range future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Labange,
Thank
welcome to budget. Welcome back to the Budget and Finance.
Oh, thank you. I was here temporarily, but I'm back here just to comment.
You don't need to fill out a card, but I'm still going to hold you to 2
That's okay. I'll be good. I don't know. I'll be as good as Mr. Walker. I'm going to vote for Mr. Walker. He gets
I'm
the
going
best.
to try anyway.
I got friends on both sides, but it's not about friendship. It's about what we do best for the city of Los Angeles. And having worked in this building for almost 40 years and knowing the fourth floor where our offices are used to be building and safety, and the fifth and sixth planning department, there's reason there's separation. There's a vision. There's a culture of just an individual who is a planner, is to look outside the box, to see what goes in an area, what the new thinking is. And then building and safety, to really concentrate on safety. We have big issues coming up as it relates to earthquakes and pre-75 buildings, soft story, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd say let's go cautiously. What I've read hasn't told me there's a roadmap or a building plan that's going to be successful. What San Diego may have done in reverse, I just think there's a lot of, I want planners to be planners and safety engineers to be safety engineers, because that's the key. And with all the challenge that we have, we'll do well. So I just want to make that point. I don't in favor of this marriage. I think we could work on it and take what's good, see where there's duplicate work, but make the right decision. So I think that I stated it clearly. Any questions from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Labange. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Cindy Cleghorn, followed by Dr. Molly Rhodes.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, council members. Thank you very much. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I'm here on behalf of Plan Check NC. Plan Check is an educational alliance of neighborhood councils and community groups that meets monthly regarding land use and matters. So my comments today have to do with the consolidation, and that it's been the sentiment of in our plan check meetings that we support moving forward with this, and it's long overdue. I know that we see a lot of situations in our communities where people are not pulling building permits whatsoever. They're just opening up. And getting enforcement is challenging at best. So while we do have cooperation with more serious matters, the more lower level matters of enforcement are difficult. And when we go to planning or we go to building and safety, they say it's the opposite. Go to, building and safety will go to planning and vice versa. So I would encourage you to keep things in motion, and let's move forward and see how we progress. We're happy and looking forward to working together as we do progress in consolidation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Molly Rhodes, followed by Dolores Spears.
Hi. In the interest of efficiencies, I'm just going to say that we support the staff recommendation and the comments today, and turn it over to Dolores.
Thank you.
I'm Dolores Spears with AFSCME District Council 36, representing the employees of Local 3090. The LA City Coalition of Unions sent in a letter of support of this motion to the council early on, and we fully support a review to provide better service. We continue to support the Price-Labange motion to expand the scope of the consultant to include a report on options other than consolidation. And in the words of a former employer of mine, he said, "Let's do it right the first time." We respectfully request that this body support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Jay Handel, followed by Stanley Treadle. Is Mr. Handel here? Doesn't appear to be here. Okay.
Hi, Stanley Treadle. I'm representing myself. I've been around this building, 35 years, helping mostly nonprofits and organizations that need to get through the roadmap around here. Everybody said everything already. Just want to say one thing. If it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, you can fix it, but at least use reason. And reason means get more options or leave it alone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker now is Jay Handel, followed by Fred Valderrama. No problem.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jay Handel. I am the re-elected chair of the Budget Advocates as of Saturday, and I'm here to say that a big concern we have is the fact that having spent over $800,000 in a contract that hasn't been affected, basically, because you don't have a report yet. We find it very interesting that we would want to change things and spend more money to find more options when we don't even know what the options are in the contract yet and whether they actually work or not. So unless the City Council, the CAO, and everyone else has seen something that the public hasn't been privy to, I think it would make much more sense fiscally, be much more fiscally responsible to get the report from the consultant, read it, tear it around, and if it doesn't work, then come back and allocate some funding, because it's pretty evident at this point it's not going to happen in January anyway, the way things are looking, with the mayor wanting to stop it and many council members wanting to stop it. But it just doesn't seem to make sense to send the consultant out on a wild goose chase to come up with a whole bunch of more options when they were charged with finding an option to make it better. And if you're going to sit here and nod and say, yes, we got something, but we didn't tell you, fine. But if that's not the case, then it's just fiscally irresponsible to spend any more money and any more time, and certainly any more staff time coming to all these meetings to try and get you guys to make a different decision, because for whatever reason they don't want the contract to happen. So it may be good, it may be bad, but let's see the report. And if the report tells us it's not right, then let's go to the contractor and you guys can pony up some more money. And if the report is right, then let's effectuate it and make it move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Handel. You might not have been in the room at the time, but I asked the question of whether there would be additional cost for the expanded scope of work, and at this point there would not be any additional cost for the expanded scope of work. Just
sure, and I appreciate that, but knowing how overrides and add-ons go on, we know somewhere down the line they're going to come back and say we need more money.
Well,
thank you.
There's no evidence of that, though. So our next speaker is Fred Valderrama, and by the way, we seem to be having a clock issue here. It's set at 1 for some reason. So if we can set that at 2 so that Mr. Valderrama gets his complete time. Of course, if it's not running, I guess that's a good thing, isn't it?
Not for me.
All right.
Honorable Chair, council members, I'm here today to voice my support for the motion to expand the scope of work for Matrix. I am sure Matrix can provide more very specific cost savings and safe measures in order to achieve all the goals of this committee. The goal to identify efficient, faster, and easier services to the residents of the City of Los Angeles. I've spoken here, I think, last month, and once again say my background is a 13-year city councilman for City of Monterey Park, and I've served for 24 years on the Economy and Efficiency Commission for the County of Los Angeles. And oftentimes, the last 24 years, it's been brought up consolidation, and we were tasked with the study, and never once did we come back and say, yeah, get rid of this department. We found the problems, we identified specific problems, and the Board of Supervisors adopted our recommendations. And I'm so glad to hear what I hear here today. It seems like we're really on the right track for what I think is the right solution. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, sir. That's the last card that I have. Any other cards?
Tyler Munhall, CEO. If it's possible to get the motion, if the committee adopts the motion, if it's possible to get it in council as soon as possible, that would help us so that we can issue our report, because we're holding our report until this, about 2 weeks until this is cleared up. And that way, we need that report out so that we can make the departments whole before January 1 if we're going to delay.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, any further discussion? It sounded to me like the sentiment of the body was, at least for the moment, to concur with the Plum Committee report, advance the matter to council, and have our further discussion there. Is that the sentiment of the members? All right. Then, without objection, that'll be the action of the committee. And we'll get that to council at the first available date that we can. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your participation in that important matter.
Good point.
And that brings us to item number 7.
Actually, yes, item number 7 is motion Weezer O'Farrell Cedillo relative to requesting a report with recommendations to update the arts development fee ordinance.
We do have continuing work in the committee, so if you could exit as quietly as possible, please. Thank you.
To update the amounts collected and the process for collecting and distributing funds, as well as recommendations for expanding the types of projects generating arts development fees and appropriate credits and exemptions. On October 9, 2013, the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River Committee approved the motion with recommendations as amended.
All right. Do we have a staff report on number 7?
There currently is no staff report, as this is a motion requesting the Department of Cultural Affairs to develop a report.
Okay. Well, members, although I don't have the numbers here in front of me, I think you've probably experienced much the same issue that I have with the arts development fee, which is often money is produced by developers that can't effectively be used because of the narrow constraints on both the geographical location and the purpose of those funds. And I think the point here of this motion is to have a look at broadening the ways that we can use those funds in furtherance of the arts. There's a few things I would like to suggest as additions to this report, and I'd propose that we adopt the recommendations of the Arts, Park, Health and Aging and River Committee, but with the further instructions to the CLA to report on other options within the next 45 days, including changing the fee allocation process for off-site art so that it's in line with the current fee allocation process for on-site art, and specifically with regard to what can be used for performing arts, for example, as opposed to visual arts. I'd like to, as to the extent legally permissible, I'd like to be able to hear our options for allowing fee revenues to be used for visual and performing arts in addition to physical arts within a specific radius of the development, as broadly as we can construct that radius. And other examples of nexus, since it has to be, as I understand it, to benefit the employees who are working in a particular development or the residents there, if we can relate it to transit routes, major boulevards, those sorts of things by which those people will be having access to that development. If we can adopt that as our nexus, it would significantly ease our ability to utilize these funds in an effective way. And then I'd also like to study the feasibility of funding citywide arts programs and arts education programs that would be accessible to and provide benefit to all of the people of the city, including the people who are being brought into those developments. So the challenge here is that we have all these little pots of money, and they're gathering dust, and we can't use them. And that doesn't help the arts, and it certainly doesn't help developers to have to pay that money and then not have it be used. So if there's any other questions or...
I appreciate that. And I know we've discussed this, I think, every year at budget as well for years. And it is a big struggle. And we've worked with Cultural Affairs and the City Attorney's Office for years to try to figure out how the city, the residents, and the business employees can benefit from the fact that these developers are paying these funds in and then we can't use it. So I'm not sure if your recommendation included allowing us to use it for local civic events as well. But if we can look at that, as long as those civic events were open to the public, because there are great opportunities where we can bring culture and civic events open to the public, either into parks, recreation facilities, performing arts centers, and invite the public. So if we could look at the ability to use those funds for that purpose as well, I would add that if it wasn't already.
Absolutely.
If I may, council members, Matthew Rudnick, AGM Cultural Affairs. We've recently, again, kind of begun working with the city attorney and the CLA to report back and really investigate possible amendments or looking at the existing dollars that have been collected to really open up and be more flexible with the use and deployment of the funds. So we'd be happy to report back and include these amendments to the motion.
Terrific.
So will that be an ordinance that's coming back, a draft ordinance, or what's the next
No,
step?
it'll have to be a report back because they need to let us know what the range of legal options that we have for drafting an ordinance would be because of the need for a nexus. So, but when we get that report back, the next step soon after that, I hope, will be a new ordinance.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. That brings us to item number 10.
Yes. Item number 10 is Office of Finance report relative to a specific fee requirement codified within the legislative language of Senate Bill 1186 Steinberg.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ed Cabrera, Assistant Director, Office of Finance. Thank you, Chair, Council members. The report before the committee today is the Office of Finance's report regarding Senate Bill 1186. Senate Bill 1186 was passed in September of 2012 and signed into law. SB 1186 addresses various amendments to a variety of state administrative codes related to disability access. The intent of the program is to address predatory lawsuits, disability access and outreach and education, and other programs, including funding. The particular aspect that the Office of Finance wishes to identify to the committee members as well as to seek direction from the committee as well as the full council is related to a specific requirement that mandates that local cities, including the City of Los Angeles, collect a state-mandated $1 additional fee from those businesses that receive as applicants for a business license or similar instrument or permit, or applicants for a renewal of that license, permit, or similar instrument. The Office of Finance did speak with other city family members, including prior representatives of the prior mayor's administration as well as the prior administration of the city council. We also met with the city attorney. We also met with the CLA and CAO and other related departments that are impacted, specifically building and safety, to discuss the program. We also looked at what other cities are doing. There is a lack of consensus in terms of other cities' implementation of SB 1186. For example, some cities are absorbing the cost. Some cities are seeking to collect the $1 mandated fee from the businesses under threat of withholding issuance of the business license or permit. So there are a variety of issues and concerns that the Office of Finance has. In our discussions with the other representatives of the city family, we identified three specific concerns. First of all, here within the City of Los Angeles, there are approximately 100,000 businesses or more that currently have no business tax liability. This would be either they're completely exempt because they're nonprofit entities, but they're still required to report for business tax purposes, or they may be receiving a business tax incentive exemption, such as our small business exemption, our new business exemption. SB 1186 would require these businesses that would normally not remit any payment to the Office of Finance to remit that $1 fee. The second concern would be is that...
I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. So a company that's doing business here in Los Angeles that doesn't otherwise pay any business tax, any business license fee, is going to send us a check for $1. And
that is correct.
And we're going to send them an invoice, presumably, to send us the $1. And then if they don't send us the $1, we have to proceed with a collection action against them for the $1?
Well, SB 1186 is silent as to enforcement action. However, you are correct. If a business does not pay, then certainly it is obvious that in order for the city to collect on that dollar, it's going to cost much more than that dollar fee. And by the way, that dollar fee, 70% stays with the city, 30% is required to be remitted to the state architect's office. So there are concerns as far as enforcement action that would be required or necessary.
The other concern, we don't even get as much as the cost of the stamp that it takes us to send out the invoice to collect the dollar.
That is correct.
Is there anything in this legislation that provides reimbursement to local governments for the unfunded mandate that this is?
There is not. What is included within the language of the legislation is that the city can retain 5% of, the city retains 70% to use for the programs, for education outreach, and other disability access programs. Of that 70%, 5% can be used by the city to offset its administrative costs to collect that fee. But absent that, there is no other language regarding offsets.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Go right ahead. You had a couple of other...
Sure. So, the other concern, in addition to the fact that businesses that normally do not pay would have to remit that fee, the enforcement action that could be required, that obviously would exceed any monetary funds that the city would keep. The third concern is the fact that obviously this could be considered business friendly. It could be considered a nuisance, especially for those businesses that normally would not remit. What the Office of Finance is recommending is either the CAO identify funding so that rather than collect directly from the businesses, the city absorb the cost and fund the fees. For example, we have approximately 460,000 businesses. So if we were to assume that all 460,000 paid, that means that approximately 322,000 would stay with the city and approximately 138,000 would have to be remitted to the state architect's office on a quarterly basis each calendar period. Absent that first recommendation being determined to be feasible, or if the city policymakers decide to go in another direction, the office is seeking instruction and guidance on actually implementing SB 1186, coming forward with the 2014 business tax renewal season. And at that time, if those are the instructions, then both the fee for 2013 as well as the fee for 2014 would be collected. And by the way, this program runs effective from January 1st, 2013 through December 31st, 2018.
Okay, so if we were to go the route of absorbing the cost of this, presumably the amount that we'd have to absorb would be that 30% component, the 30% component that we would otherwise have to remit to the state.
Actually, sir, I think we would also have to make an appropriation for the services that the fee was supposed to pay for here in the city. At least that's...
But would that, I mean, I guess that's a question that we would have to really work out, whether or not that would need to be a new appropriation, if it could be encompassed within funds that are already appropriated, whether it can be through in-kind services that are already being performed. I mean, we'd have to have a look at that. But the check we'd have to write to the state would be the
30% correct.
Okay.
And Office
of
Finance.
Well, we do have to figure that other component of it as well, and whether that is contained already in our budget in some place or another, or whether it could be.
And if I could, that's the disabled access component. We also are getting a lot of federal grants. We are expanding programs for access. And so I think we've got to look at that and explore the fact that we are adhering to that. Doesn't mean we have to spend more money.
Yeah.
We can show progress.
Mr. Kretz.
I would think that we should only charge where we are already charging something else, and we can just attach it to a bill. If there's some place where we're just required to collect $1 that you can't collect for less than $1, I would almost think we should object or sue the state as a tax on the city of Los Angeles.
I agree.
Because how can they ask us to collect something that's going to cost more to collect and us just have to pay pay them for it. I mean, it's one thing to have a state mandate without funding, but to actually have a state mandate to pay them, somehow it seems more than ridiculous. So if there's a way to collect it easily from people we're already collecting it from, I think that makes sense. But I don't see how we're required to collect the uncollectible, and I would think we should either refuse to do it or legally engage in some way to object to it.
A lot of cities don't have a business tax either. So, would it be possible, Mr. Chair, to entertain that idea of perhaps a resolution opposing this and asking the state legislature and/or the state legislative analyst office to look into that and the fact that it's an unfair burden?
We can certainly do that, but the bill has already been signed by the governor. It's in effect, it's law. It would require new legislation to, reverse the legislation that the legislature just enacted. But I don't know if the city attorney has evaluated whether or not there's any potential grounds for it, or whether there's limitations on this ability to impose a local tax through Sacramento without a vote of the people. I don't know if there's a Proposition 13 issue there. I mean, there are a number of things that I suppose we would want to look at, but I think what we should do, because it sounds like there's options that we're still trying to evaluate with the CAO, potentially with the city attorney as well. So why don't we just hold this in committee for now and ask that Finance and City Attorney and CAO report back in 30 days on whether, first of all, whether there are other sources of funding by which this could be absorbed, number one. Number two, what that means in its application. If we are to absorb the cost, what options do we have for the 70% component as well as the 30% that we would absorb? Whether we can differentiate between businesses that are currently paying a license fee and those that aren't, those that are exempt in imposing the dollar. And then I guess the final point would be the sentiment expressed by all of us, which is, what legal options, if any, legal or legislative options might there be to relieve the city of this unfunded mandate and imposition on local control?
I wonder if we could add to that contact with the author of this bill to see if they even realize that this was a snafu that was being created, and whether their legislative intent was that we be collecting a dollar from otherwise non-taxpayers.
Well, I'm pretty confident he realizes, but I think
whether they realized it before the legislation became law, and whether they intended to create this, or whether they could assist us in an interpretation that didn't include that dollar from people that otherwise aren't paying it.
So I think with regard to approaching the legislature or President Steinberg, the first necessary step would be to get this report back, and then we can make a decision about whether to take a position as a council with regard to new legislation, or reaching out to the author even to introduce corrective legislation if necessary. But let's get the report back first so that we understand what our legal options are as well as our budgetary options, if that makes sense. Makes sense?
Sounds good.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, just one note, and we certainly will work with the Office of the CAO as well as the Office of the City Attorney in turning around that report. I just wanted to point out, in the event that the eventual decision, if there is a decision that the city collected, then obviously we would need sufficient lead time to revise our renewal forms for this current season. And we've actually already have some mock-ups, so we should be able to do that. But I just wanted to make that note for the record as well.
I appreciate that you're ahead of the curve in getting prepared for that, possible eventuality. I'm kind of sensing that there's not a lot of strong sentiment among these three members to actually impose that.
Understood.
fee. So, but thank you for being ahead of the curve on it. Let's consider what our options are first.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. So that'll be the action of the committee. And we are now to general public comment. I have no general public comment cards, so general public comment is closed. And if there's nothing else before the committee, Mr. Ceja, we are adjourned. Thank you.